morning, everybody, and welcome this morning to the Dalí Museum. We're very happy to see all of you here for another one of our Coffee with the Curators. We're very pleased also it's not really raining too hard right now, so even though it's waterlogged outside, it's not a terrible day to be here at the Dalí Museum enjoying culture and the amenities. First off, we want to just thank Cafe Gala. They are the sponsors for Coffee with the Curator, and they provide the refreshment for this morning. And we are here for a very special talk today, but first let me tell you a little bit about what's coming up. Of course, I'm sure everybody here is aware we have the Picasso show coming up on November 8th. It's going to be opening to the public. For members, we are going to have that first week leading up to it, from Monday through Friday, will be members-only viewing of the exhibition. So if you are a member, I certainly encourage you to take advantage of it. It should be a little bit quieter and a little bit easier to see at a slower pace than it will be after November 8th. And we have the coffees that will come after that are focused on Picasso. The first one is going to be on November 5th. We have our director, Hank Hine, who's going to be talking about Picasso and Dalí, space, time, and inwardness. And his interest is really on the psychological state that Picasso brings to his paintings, and also Dalí brings to his work. So that will be the focus there. Then we have on December 3rd, our curator, William Jeffett, will be talking about the show, which was something that he's conceived and worked on for the past 2 years, but actually we were talking about it, I think, 10 years ago. So this show has been a long time coming, so definitely you want to come to that. And then on January 7th, we have the curator at the Lipa Ratner Museum, Lynn Whitelaw, who's going to be speaking about the Lipa Ratner's experience of Picasso. I believe they have done 4 shows related to Picasso over the past 10 to 15 years, and they also have the only authorized full-scale replica of Guernica anywhere in the world, which is a really odd and unusual distinction. But if you haven't seen it, I encourage you to go up to the Lipa Ratner and enjoy that. We also have, on November 18th, Roxanne Fay, who of course has been named, I think, for the second year running as Actor of the Year or Female Actor of the Year here in the Bay Area through Creative Loafing. She's the one who's played Gala in the performances here at the museum. She's going to be teaming up with a Simple Theater from Eckerd College. They're going to be doing a reading of Steve Martin's Picasso at Lapin Agile. And if that sounds interesting to you, I strongly encourage you to go online and get tickets, because it's only going to be one-time performance and there's only 95 seats. So we assume it's going to sell out quickly. And then in January, on the 24th, we have the Fusion Dance Ensemble from Sarasota, who are going to be coming up, and they're doing a very specific piece designed around the Picasso-Dalí show. So that's going to be exciting. Those tickets will still need to be put online. And today we're here for a very special talk. It is Hispanic Heritage Month, and so almost a year ago we were wondering if there were some opportunities to really expand some of our speakers. One of the people that we kept mentioning over and over again was Rita Risco. Rita is a docent at the Dalí Museum. She was in the second docent class from 1982, and she was certainly knew intimately the Morses as well as the early experience of the museum. While we were talking about the possibility of talks this year, we also were working on the legacy projects. And Yvonne Maroulier, who's on our staff, works with us with the staff. She has been working on this project, which has been a continuing project along with the historians in our volunteer council. So Jay Boda and now Brett Holt have been working with her, and we've now got 6 of them online, and we're finishing Yvonne has finished the final 5, which we're going to be parceling out. But the first one we are going to be presenting afterwards, which focuses on Rita and her experience of being here at the museum in the early days and her memories of the Morses. And so we're going to first hear about the generation of 27, the literary generation that Dalí was a part of. And then if you can stay with us, we hope you will stay, a very short 10-minute presentation following her talk of Rita's legacy film. So with that, I now introduce Rita Risco.
Buenos dias, bon dia, good morning. I feel very privileged to be here in front of all of you this morning, but I want to make sure that I thank Peter, Yvonne, the volunteer staff, and Joan, because thanks to Joan, I'm here today, because she was the first one to taught me and introduce me to Dalí. And I want to remind you that all these years that I have done it, every time I walk in the museum, for me, is my fountain of youth. And it's also a place where everybody smiles at me and makes me feel so loved and wanted. So I wanted to make sure that you all know that. Yes.
Yeah, one more final thing, which I know I did not say because I'm just always forgetting something essential. For 20 years, Rita has been a Spanish teacher here in Pinellas County in the IB program. That is really the main reason that Rita is presenting the generation of 27. We love Rita, but she is also a great scholar. So I just wanted to make sure that was understood. So with that, I will step aside.
Don't I tell you that I love being here? No, the reason why I decided to use this topic is because with all these years that I have been with Dalí, I always have said he has to have come from a wonderful family like I know he did, his genius and everything. But what happened when he was being a student? What was going on in his formative years? And it happens that Dalí was coincidental with a wonderful group of poets that were recognized as the best after the famous golden age of Spain, which includes Cervantes. And since this group of poets came, there has not been another group of poets of the quality of the generation of 27. As we move around and start looking at them, we're going to find out that these people were unbelievable, what they achieved in their lifetimes and also during hardships because they were part of the Civil War and all the turmoil of Spain. The generation initially started with 10 people. These 10 poets some of them were living at their residence and some of them knew each other, and they started to become as a group. They were enthralled by the avant-garde movement. They also had certain ideas of, they were rejecting the bourgeoisie, the bourgeois, and the art of realism and illusion. They also thought that they could change the world in politics. So they came together as a group in 1927. You can read the names: Lorca, Alberti, Guillén, Gerardo Diego, Pedro Salinas, Alonso, Cernuda, Vicente Alexandre, Emilio Prados. They were the core. Later on, they started including more poets, and the generation of 27 today also recognize people like Picasso and Dalí, Miró, some of the Falla, some of the musicians of the time where this developed. But I feel that we need to start with what was happening in Spain. What was the background during these turbulent years? Because the beginning of the 20th century, it's almost like the beginning of the 21st century. A lot of situations, politics. I think it's like a Game of Thrones, like that program that is going around. So there was disaster, reaction, reform, anarchism, and of course it ended with the Civil War. Spain had lost in 1898. Spain, due to the Spanish-American War, lost the last two American colonies, Cuba and Puerto Rico, but it also lost the Philippines, which was part of the Asian colonies. It found itself with Spain economically suffered, and they had a series of, in the 19th century, they had many kings that ruled. They even had the French, his brother of Napoleon at the beginning of the 19th century. The last king of the generation was Alfonso XIII of Bourbon. Alfonso inherited the throne at age 16. He loved to play, he loved to hunt, he loved music. So he was not a very good king, and he did not govern very well. Because of that, and he also inherited a lot of troubled times. So during his time, Spain started suffering a lot of economic problems. But also, he was in power until 1922. Well, we had the Industrial Revolution, the Russian Revolution. We had a lot of upheaval that were changing everything. So he was deposed, and he moved to Italy, and he died in Rome in exile. He made the mistake of appointing this gentleman by the name of Miguel Primo de Rivera. Miguel Primo de Rivera was an aristocratic military. He was appointed by the king to be the prime minister. However, even though his intentions at the beginning was to be only a governor for 3 years, I think he started loving the power. So he stayed, and because of his belief, he was very much into the monarchy, and he was extremely to the right, and he was not good either with managing what was happening politically in Spain at that time. And because of that, he was asked to resign, but he had to leave Spain as a dictator in 1933. By now, his son, José Primo de Rivera, following his father's steps, decided to align himself with the movement of fascism, and he created what is known as the Spanish fascism, known as the Falange. He was extremely to the right, very religious, and that didn't go well, because by this time, there were a lot of people trying to create a republic, and they were on the other side. They have already heard of the Marxists, the Russian Revolution, so they were completely opposite to him. So he was in prison, and then he died in 1936 in prison. Because of that, Spain started suffering a lot of changes. Spain became a republic, and it has several presidents that took time to be there, but it also was a lot of revolt. There were anarchism, the farmers were complaining because of their wages, so there was a lot of instability, and that brings to the Civil War. This is a picture of what's Madrid looking 1922, which is the year, more or less, that Dalí comes to live in Spain, in Madrid. And you could see that at that time, Spain was quite a developed city for a European capital. But this is Madrid as a result of the Spanish Civil War, the bombings of what was happening. I must play justice and say that both sides were pretty bad. They wanted power, and there was a lot of, good and bad things. Dalí, in 1936, did this painting, which is called The Premonition of Civil War, because the war didn't start until 1938. And you can see in this painting, and Peter need to help me here if I miss something, that, let me see, okay, here. What happens when you're not teaching anymore? You forget how to use, sorry. You can see the idea of decay, the idea of death, and this is just a premonition of what really happened. One interesting thing is the title that it had to do with beans, because that was the staple for many, many people. I have heard and read stories that people will cook beans and add water to the pots because of hunger, trying to stretch their meals. So normally, that's why I guess the Spaniards love bean soups and bread, because that was what they would be able to eat during these times. The other one that will give us another idea was the famous Guernica. And it's interesting because what happened was that Franco make a treaty with Hitler that if he will allow the German planes to bomb a city, he, in return, will never invade Spain, and he will be able to fly to England through Spain. Now, the interesting thing is that the Basque and the Catalonians during that time were trying to get independence. So I'm pretty sure that Franco did not like the Basque. So Guernica is in the Basque country, the city of Guernica. So now we see El Caudillo, and Generalissimo Francisco Franco Bahamonde. And he became the dictator of Spain from 1938 to 1975. He was the last fascist, do you say fascist? Fascist, dictator that was alive. because of his friendship with Mussolini and with Hitler, he was ostracized by the other European countries, especially at the end of the war. But it was not until 1953 that the United States supported Spain with military power, and that's where they instituted one of the bases that Spain still has in the city of Roda, close to Madrid. He ruled with an iron fist. I had the opportunity to be in Spain in the 70s, in the summers, and I remember being a young person walking, and there was so much order, and you will see what they will call the tres, the hats were senior moment, I forgot what they're called. It had three sides, and they would call a name, and what was it called? Anybody remembers this? The hat had a name, and they would be known, and people would whisper in the streets when they were there. They were afraid. And if you went to a hotel, you had to leave your passport, and and at night, the militia will come and check who was staying where. So it was this is the 70s now. So finally, normality lasts 100 years. He died, and he had appointed Juan Carlos de Borbón y Parma to become a king. But at that time, Spain was flirting with democracy, so they started instituting a democracy, which I have to say that it has been one of the few drastic change of government where there was not a bloodshed. They decided to make what is known the parliamentary monarchy, just like what England has, and they had a president, and the king would just be a figure. Due to his ill health and maybe his standard of life, his son he abdicated in favor of his son in April of this year. So now Felipe VI of Bourbon is the new young king of Spain. With that said, you could see that these were turmoil times. Dalí, at that time, in the 20s, had left Figueras and started to come, this is a picture of Madrid today, and you can see that still has that elegance that it had in the 20s, but of course with all the modern parts of the 21st century. And there's a saying in Spain that they say from Madrid to heaven, because they have said that the skies in Madrid are beautiful, and it's true. And you can find love in Madrid too, I know. Here, you will see the Residencia. It's important to talk a little bit about this fantastic place. This place was founded by two gentlemen, one by the name of Jimenez Fraud and Giner de los Rios. It was a very elitist place because they wanted to form a group of young minds that will later be able to, help the country to become more modern and open. They believe in the philosophy of Kant and Krauss, where education should be free from government and church. And they imposed that, and they also wanted to do the marriage of science and art. They believe that in order to have a good education, you have to be exposed to both. In some places, the Residencia has been called as Oxfordcito, which means Little Oxford, because it was not only a place for the students in the university to come and live, but it was also a lecture place where they start bringing a lot of personalities that were very famous that gave lectures, and the students were able to be part of that. So people like, you see the names, Einstein, Igor Stravinsky, different kind. Notice that it's not only science, there were also some artists. And one influence, Luis de Aragon was one of the influences later in the poetry with Dalí, and he was also a visitor there. So I'm sure that during this time, Dalí and his friends attended some of these lectures. We cannot talk about La Residencia without mentioning Sigmund Freud. Oh, well, Sigmund Freud was the guru, and he was the one that inspired a lot of what happened with the surrealism. Dalí went to visit, Dalí wanted to meet Freud very badly, and it was not until 1938 that Stephen Swett, German, introduced him in London. And this is what Freud said after he met Dalí. I have been inclined to regard the surrealists as complete fools, but that young Spaniard, with his candid fanatical eyes and his undeniable technical mastery, has changed my estimate. Now, Freud, by this time, Dalí had read the interpretation of dreams of Freud. Here, while Swett was talking to Freud, Dalí was doing this painting, and he wanted to do a hybrid monster in the like of a snail. Now, I'm telling you what I read, because like I was telling Peter, I have never interviewed any of these people. But in some of the accounts, they said that Swett intercepted the painting before Freud could see it. So here you have the rendition of Dalí's idea of Freud. This is a picture now, we're into the residency. I think it's 1922. In some places say 22, some others say 23. Here comes Dalí. Dalí, for all accounts, was a very shy person when he walked into the residence. He was coming from Figueras. He had been exposed to Barcelona, which is a beautiful, very modern city. However, he still had what we call that little town boy attitude. And he had the long hair. He said they used to wear that cape, the pipe. And as you will see later, that's not the way that those young students used to dress in Madrid. He really called the attention. So this will be the place that will change his life completely. We can see that Dalí, the first person he met was named by the name of Pepín Bello. Pepín Bello is what today we call the eternal student. He never graduated from anything, but he studied medicine, he studied law. You have to remember that all of these people had good financial backing. So they could afford to travel, they could afford to have good times. So Pepín Bello never finished, but for all accounts, he was sort of like the glue, the one that attracted all of them. He died when he was 101 years. And his last interview was when he was 100. And this is from that interview. So I had to translate it to English, so I apologize if there's not a very good translation. But he said that he was walking in the residence when he saw the door of the room open, and there was Dalí was there, and there were a lot of drawings all over the floor. And that he had approaching, and then he saw him with the long hair and a cape, and the paintings. And then he asked him, "Are these yours?" And Dalí said yes. And that's when he went to see Lorca and said, "You need to meet this Catalonian. He draws wonderfully. We must befriend him." And that's, according to him, how it started. However, Dalí met Lorca going to the cafeteria, and that's where they became very good friends. Here you can see the style. This is so I like it because, let me see if I can do this. Sorry. Where's the little thing? Okay, you can see the barber cutting his hair, and you can also see how Dalí is starting to dress. So they taught him to be a little more gentleman, more debonair, and you can see that Dalí followed through. So I think this is a wonderful picture to tell us the metamorphosis of Dalí from this bohemian man into a gentleman of respect. Now, we see what I call the trifecta, because these were his closest friends, Luis Buñuel and Garcia Lorca. Buñuel was different. He was the antithesis of Lorca and Dalí. He was strong. He used to love to go to practice boxing, and he loved the nightlife because he loved women very much. So he will resent later the friendship between Lorca and Dalí, because Dalí and Lorca had more in common, because they would visit the Prado Museum, and he fell a little out. But it was during this time that the idea of doing the Chien Andalou start coming. This is a painting of Dalí of Luis Buñuel. Now, what happened here was interesting, and I have these next pictures because I believe that Dalí and Lorca sort of become a fusion. At that time, this is a painting of Dalí, which is called Dos Cabezas, two heads, but this is a painting of Lorca. So Lorca began painting, Dalí started writing. And this is the time where the famous ode to Salvador Dalí came to be. Dalí also helped Lorca to do the stage for Mariana Pineda, which for all accounts, Lorca said that was his very first play. And Mariana Pineda was a character from early part, I think it's between the 18th century, and she was a rebel. So they said that the character that he portrayed of Mariana Pineda later caused him a lot of problems because they saw that this was his way of protesting against the regime or what was happening. Here, we have to mention the putrefactos because I hear that a lot and I really didn't know what it meant. Well, it was the idea of Pepín Bello. They said Pepín Bello was very friendly, had a wonderful sense of because you don't have to work and you don't have to worry about money. I think you can be a very happy person. So Pepín Bello started playing games, and some of them were with words. And there had been a man that was very influential at the beginning, another very famous writer by the name of Juan Ramón Jiménez. Senior moment. Juan Ramón Jiménez was a teacher and lived in the Residencia, but he was a little old-fashioned. So Dalí and Lorca started sort of poking jokes around the figure. The interesting thing was that the book was never published. And it was called Los Putrefactos. They will call putrefactos anybody that put airs, the kind of like people that just thought they were better, and that was the idea. Here we have how Dalí started getting interrelated with some of the members of the generation of 27. Rafael Alberti, Luis Cernuda, Vicente Aleixandres, Prados, all of them lived in the residence at that time. Of course, Lorca. And I have purposely not going to talk a lot about Lorca because I think Lorca is a study on his own. But here we have, we have here, this is a picture that Dalí gave Lorca. And this is the room at the residence of Lorca. Lorca wanted to be a musician. His mother played the piano beautiful, and he learned to play the piano as a concert player. So he used to entertain all of the people in the residencia, many afternoons playing the piano. I read that still today in the residence you could see in one of the rooms the piano that Lorca used to play. He was the glue. He was the one that, they say that there was not a leader in the generation of 27, but if they would have been a leader, Lorca would have been the one. He was loved, he had a wonderful happiness, and yet he also had a very dark side of him. And we will see that a little bit later when we see a little excerpt of one of his poetry. This is the Kiss by Lorca, so you could see some kind of like resemblance to what was happening in the art world. Lorca and Dalí, and you can see how Dalí changed. He became, more, how can I say, more debonair, more elegant. This is a painting that that Dalí did for Lorca, and it's very interesting because in some of my readings, I read that at the end of Dalí's life, when he was dying in the hospital, one of the nurses overheard him saying in Catalan, Federic, with a C, mon amic, Federico, my friend. And it sort of like, I thought, it's true, because when people are getting to the end of their lives, they start remembering the early parts. And he used to remember a lot, start talking a lot about the residents. So that's what I read. So here we finished. There's a caricature that they did of the three, Bello, Dalí, and Lorca. And with the residence today, which the UNESCO has made a very important place, and it's open again. It closed in 1936 because you can imagine if the idea was free education without the church and the government, that didn't go well with Franco. So it was closed, but now it's reopened, and this is what it looks today, and it's in the same place that it used to be. All right, now we go to the generation of 27. I use this picture because when we talk about a lot of the male poets. Yes, the core were all men, but towards the end, they start opening to female figures, and some of them became very good in literature, and they were poets and writers. Mariana Zambrano has won the Premio Cervantes. The Cervantes Literary Award is the most prestigious award that a person can receive in literature in Spain. So you can see that now some of them married, Dalí married one of them. So now you see a bigger group, but still we're in the 30s. How did they become the group? Well, most of them were from Andalusia, the southern part of Spain, Malaga, Granada, Cádiz. And one of them, by the name of, we will talk about him later, Gerardo Diego, he was older and he had been a teacher and he had already published some of the books of this group. And there was a celebration in Seville, in this place called the Ateneo. The Ateneo was like a building where people will go and hear lectures, and today still used for concerts. And they were celebrating, because they leave it to the Spain to celebrate death, 300 years of the death of another wonderful poet, Luis de Góngora y Argote. He was from the Golden Age, and he was considered one of the best poets of that time, and he's also responsible for accepting a lot of new words into the Spanish language. So they admired him, they became together, the first 10, and then they decided to become what it was known as the generation. This is a painting of Velázquez of Luis de Góngora, and this is the painting of Dalí of Luis de Góngora. So we can see the difference and how time changes people. So this, I thought it was an interesting, because you can see the group here, but there's also one important figure that you probably have heard, because it's where are you here? The torero. This is Ignacio Sánchez Mejía, which later is one of the famous poems of Lorca. Well, Sánchez Mejía was a bullfighter, and at that time, because it has changed, now in Spain, bullfights are not that popular. He was like an artist today, like Clooney, that everything is about George Clooney, or one of the new, all of these football players, if they get in trouble, everybody, attack them. So he had money, and he lived in the southern part of Spain. So he was part of the group, invited them many times to their home. Dalí met him. So all of them had a good relationship with Ignacio Sánchez Mejía. That's why Lorca was devastated when he died in a bullfight, because the bull won. Here we have a man by the name of Jose Maria Hinojosa. He came later to the group, but he was very important because coming from a wealthy family, he had some health issues, and he started traveling in Europe. What is very interesting to me is that most of them spoke German, English, French, and Spanish. So he went to Germany, then he went to France. He was in the Sorbonne, and he met the surrealist poets. So when he comes back, he's the one that introduces surrealism to the generation of 27, especially Lorca, Luis Cernuda, and Vicente Alexandre. Now what I'm going to do is give you a little profile of each of them. Luis Cernuda is considered one of the loneliest of the poets. He explored desire, love, subject, object, history, and sexuality in his poems. He drew the influences from Romanticism, Classicism, and the Surrealist avant-garde. Because of his political ideas, and he was with the left, he had to leave Spain. He's known as a classic man of exile because when he left, he went to the United States and he stayed in Mexico where he died. He never returned to Spain. But very interesting, today in Spain, he's still very well liked about the young people in the universities when they study literature. The next one is Vicente Aleixandre. Now, notice how old some of them were when they died. It's amazing. Some were in their 80s, some were in their 90s. This one, no. This one died sort of young. He suffered from an early age. He had a very serious kidney situation, and he died because of that. Vicente Aleixandre stayed in Spain. He was not in favor of Franco, but he had to stay in Spain. But he's considered a very intellectual poet. He writes about the condition of man in the cosmos, present-day society, sometimes oppression, and he tried to represent the great renewal of the traditions in Spanish poetry. It's interesting that because of his ideas, Franco forbade to publish his work until 1944. But then he was accepted and he started. In 1977, he was given the Nobel Prize of Literature. But he also received the Cervantes. Now, here we have a group of them, Lorca, Salinas, and Alberti. And I put always in style because every picture I have seen of them, they're always with a suit and a tie. I find it very, very 19th, 20th century. You don't see a lot of that in these days because we live in a different kind of world. Here we have Pedro Salinas. He was a womanizer. And he also believed in the left, so he also had to leave. He published many, many poetries. He's considered very good. And he defines poetry as an adventure to the absolute, authenticity, beauty, and wit. Pedro Salinas left Spain and taught in universities like Cambridge. He also moved to the United States where he died. In the interim, he went to Puerto Rico where he lectured in the university there. He was asked to be buried in San Juan, Puerto Rico. But Pedro Salinas had an interesting way because he was a professional professor. He taught in Johns Hopkins, Wellesley, and in many other famous universities and gave lectures. Now we have Rafael Alberti. Rafael Alberti was considered the aristocrat of the group. He came from money, and of course later the family lost it. He declared himself communist. He joined the Communist Party in Spain in the 30s. His ideas of the left, Marxist, were very strong. So a very prolific, diverse poet of the generation also won the Premio Cervantes. He was from Malaga, and he is made the favorite son of the city of Malaga. He left, he went to Argentina for many years, then he went to Mexico, and then when Franco died, he returned to Spain. Emilio Prado was born in Malaga. Do you notice that most of them are from the southern part of Spain? Andalusia was very fruitful because Picasso was from Malaga too. So Emilio Prado also wrote poetry, but he also wanted to be involved in the more traditional Spanish forms. Prado was the one that gave Dalí the book of the interpretation of dreams because his brother had studied psychology at that time. And he became associated with Manuel Altolaguirre, where they both started publishing their poetry and did a literary magazine that it was called Litoral. And the first edition, Picasso drew the page on the first edition. Aguirre left Spain, also lived in Mexico, in Cuba, and then in Mexico, of course, he knew Buñuel, and he became interested in film. He started creating some movies, and he unfortunately went to San Sebastian for the Goya, where they have that, like we have the Oscars in Spain, they have what they call the Goya awards for best films. And on his way back, he suffered an accident. So he died shortly after that. Jorge Guillén, he was an erudite. He was a true scholar. He was born in Valladolid, but he died in Malaga. And I thought that was interesting. He was a university teacher, a literary critic, and he explored the relationship of form to matter with delighting in sensuality and clarity of perception. Very good friend and contemporary of Pedro Salinas. Here's another picture. Later, they met as a group, and we can see the one with the glasses is Prado, and then you can see some of them when they came back after the death of Franco. Gerardo Diego was the only one that was pro Franco. So he never left Spain, but he was the one that taught and knew some of the poets like Cernuda and Alberti when they were younger in the residence. So his things vary. He expressed vanguardism and some classical structures in poetry. Also received the Cervantes Award. He taught in the University of Madrid for many, many years. The majority of them studied law. He studied a PhD in philosophy, literature, and music. The last one is Damaso Alonso, and Damaso Alonso was awarded again the Premio Cervantes. He was the director of the famous Spanish Royal Academy of Language. And I don't know if you're familiar with that, but there's only two that I know, academies. France has one and Spain has one. It's an institution that regulates, per se, the Spanish language. I don't know how many of you remember, but when I started teaching, people used to tell me, oh, I speak Castilian Spanish. Well, in today's world, there's only one language, Spanish. And it doesn't matter whether you're from Puerto Rico, you're from Argentina, or from Mexico. There isn't a structure, there's a grammar that you have to follow. What changes, of course, are the accent, or what also changes is certain words that are familiar to the area because of the trees that are there, because of the weather, etc. But other than that, they are the ones that regulate what, for instance, now with the advent of technology, the verb to chat is called chatear. So there's a lot of Anglicisms that have been accepted. And it's the Royal Academy of the Language that has that distinctive job. Damaso Alonso directed it for many, many years, so you can tell that he was a good scholar. Here at the end, once again, the last picture of who these people were. And here is a little review of what we have said and how they changed. It is said that they did not have the same styles of writing. However, they always got along beautiful as a group. And even though they have very strong political positions, they never wrote propaganda in their poetry. It was always love, humanity, death. Just like Dalí painted the Maracaibo and the ocean, the land. And sometimes they went back to the folklore and they were trying to revive at the end what Spanish had acquired in the Golden Age. So I don't want to read this, but if you have it, you can see. Now, I feel very strong that they have a literary legacy. And when I started doing this, I thought, of course that it had to be the way let's give him his genius, his background at home, Figueras, Cadaqués. But can you imagine you're 18 and you come to a place like La Residencia, where you are, elbow with elbow with all these creative, wonderful people, where you can go at night and go to what in Spain called cafes, where it's a place where you can drink wine or you can sit for hours without the waiter bothering you to give you the ticket for you to move. And they will discuss painting, they will discuss what was happening, philosophy. It has to be another university. It's how you start putting together things. And the other thing that I like about the presentation and the residencies, because as an ex-teacher, and living in the world that we have now, where so much changes in education, they, at the beginning of the 20th century, had it together, science and art. You cannot dissolve that. It's a marriage. You have to, you could be a scientist, you could be a doctor, but you need a little bit of the art also to complement who you are. And that's where I feel the legacy is. And just briefly, I don't know if you can see, this is Lorca and his famous poet in New York. Lorca came to study, also wealthy, he came to study in Columbia University. And I just realized, checking the time, that he was in New York when the crash of the stock market. Therefore, of course, this poem had to come, because when you read it, and if you look at the highlighted, dry butterflies, the dead, gray sponges, claws and thunderstorms, the corpse, the bear's teeth, the mummified, all of these images of death, decay, it's have to have been what he saw in people making lines to eat, how, I wasn't there, so how they said it was kind of a very tumultuous time. And last but not least, if you happen to go to Seville, you're going to see this beautiful monument in honor of the generation of 27, which is made out of marble in the middle of the city, where they have a beautiful park. It's called Alameda, where in the middle they have a lot of trees, and then the roads go in the side. And you could see, and finito.